Today on the Mr. Maple Show, we have our good friend Agustin Coello-Vera, who is the chairman of the International Maple Society.
Dr. Agustin Coello-Vera, a native of Spain, holds a Master in Arts in Physics, a PhD in Electrical Engineering from the University of California. His long career spans several fields: semiconductors, telecoms, and space. The career has taken him to California, Spain, and France. Agustin discovered and fell in love with maples when doing his garden at his last house in Toulouse, France. Since then, he's planted 800 taxa in his woodland under majestic oaks. Of this number, there are about 90 different species. Agustin was elected the chairman of the Maple Society in 2016 and has since been reelected.
We'd like to welcome you, Agustin, to our show. We really appreciate it. We've just finished up the Maple Society Symposium, and Agustin's come to visit us.
Well, for me, it's a great pleasure to be back here visiting my dear friends, Tim and Matt, that I first met a long time ago, I think.
I think we first bonded with the hanging on for dear life in the back of the van in 2009 with Frank Biles driving us to Mount St. Helens.
That's right.
I'd met you on the trip, but there's something about that near-death experience with Frank Biles driving that really brings a group together.
We went to the Mount St. Helens area a little bit after the... we saw all the damage of the eruption, so we started... knowing each other well, and last time I've been here twice already with them, and the last time was in 2014, right after the symposium at the Morris Arboretum. And wow, today I'm so impressed by how their place has grown. My God,
we've been blessed. We really have been.
You actually saw us in 2009 when we were just getting going, really. So
really, at the time there were two people working here named Tim and Matt.
That's exactly.
Today there are lots of those. Really, congratulations!
You've done thank you. Yeah.
The awesome variety of choice is really impressive here.
Well, we appreciate your mentorship, and you've been really helpful in helping us learn more about maples. I know very early on in my career, I got to go to Toulouse and visit you at your house, which was, groundbreaking for me. That was like one of the biggest trips. So I think that was the first international trip I'd ever been on.
And not only that, but he also worked with me in the garden, helping me out.
I showed up on that vacation, and Agustin handed me a pitchfork when I got in the garden and said, "We're putting out mulch."
But he was recompensed. He got the recompense with some nice French food.
Oh yes,
you cannot
I was
complain.
reimbursed wisely. Yeah, it was a winning. I won on my side. He actually asked, and I said I'll be glad to help. So we had a good time walking around talking maples. And one thing about that trip, though, we got to go up into the Pyrenees Mountains, and it was just in amazing fall color. That was such a fun trip. I'll never forget that. That was a lot of fun.
Probably not as good as your colors here, guys, in the Appalachians. That's in Europe, as everybody knows, the fall colors are not as intense. But that year was especially sunny and cool, so the beaches, the native beaches, were really, really nice at the time.
Oh, it was amazing.
How many cultivars would you say of Japanese maples that you have in your garden? Or how many cultivars of maples, I should say?
I've stopped counting, but last time I had a count, I had like 800 taxons, of which probably there were like 680, 690. I have a good species collection with about almost 100 species and subspecies. With the cultivars, I now only get the nicest ones that Tim and Matt introduced to try them out in my place. But it's becoming increasingly difficult to have to introduce new and nice cultivars, right?
It definitely is. You got to make sure that they stand out from the crowd, and you've got a really good amount of Japanese maples in your garden. What would you say is when you're growing Japanese maples in France? You're in the Southwest France.
Right.
what would you say are some of the challenges that you face with growing Japanese maples there?
Southwest France, it depends where you are. The westernmost part, which is close to the Atlantic Ocean, have ideal conditions for Japanese maples, which doesn't get very, very cold, and there is plenty of rainfall and acidic soil. So those who are lucky and live in the westernmost part of Southwest. Where I live is more towards the Mediterranean, so there we have drier summer. So the main challenge for us is rainfall in the summer. So the only way we really can grow maples there is to water them in the first few years in their growth. Afterwards, once they are in the ground 5 to 7 years, then they can take the dry summers. But up until that point, they really need help.
I mean, you're actually in the Mediterranean there.
It's not truly Mediterranean. We are in a transition zone, climatic transition zone between the Atlantic and the Mediterranean, because the local flora are based, for example, our local forests are English oaks and hornbeams, which are not Mediterranean trees. So, but it is really dry. It's much drier than the west part.
Now, how about your native home where you're from in Spain? Are there many maples that can grow in that condition?
In Spain is, for those of you who know Spain, you know that there is 2/3 are very dry and hot, and 1/3 very humid. And the northern part, again, is really, really ideal conditions. All the northern fringe of Spain, including the northwest, those are really fantastic places to grow maples. The rest of Spain is challenging. We have now a branch in Spain for the Maple Society, and we have members who are from all the corners of Spain. And in the exchanges, I can see that those, for example, who live in Madrid, the capital, they really, really, really struggle to get them to keep them alive through these very dry and hot summers. It's a little bit like trying to grow maples in Southern California. For those of you who are in the States, you know that.
But you've done that as well.
Yeah,
right?
well, but I wasn't in maples at the time. Right?
So speaking of, you've got so many different maples. What got your love for maples going? Like, where did you begin your love for Japanese maples?
It was accidental, in fact. Of course, I've always loved nature and plants and trees, but nothing specific about maples. So when we bought our last house where we live today, 30 years ago in southwestern France, we moved there from Spain. It was a house in a forest, and under the huge oaks, there was nothing planted. In fact, the house was not finished. So we finished the house, and I started doing a garden. And among the plants I initially planted, there were 3 Japanese maples. By accident, because the landscaper who came to help me suggested to plant those. I said, why not? He planted also other trees.
What were those 3 Japanese maples?
It was Crimson Queen, Osakazuki, Kyo, and one of the ihimes is Kurohime. Kurohime?
Nice.
Yes.
Nice.
I actually had pretty good taste then.
Yeah,
that was good
For a landscaper, you're starting out pretty good there.
That was so. When I started, I didn't pay attention a lot, but as the years and the seasons passed, I saw the beauty of these trees. Really, really magnificent. The colors in the fall of Osakazuki were just mind blowing. So you start pulling the cord, and then you see that there are a few more, and then there are, oh my God! And then you buy the books of bird trees, Peter Gregory, and you fall into the trap of the. So more and more I started adding. That's it. It's impossible to have a full collection because last time we counted there were 3,800 cultivars, and today our estimation is we're about 5,000 cultivars.
Wow.
So I don't think anybody should pretend to have the full collection of them. But I guess I have a good representation of all the different types of cultivars. There, as maple lovers know, there are some which are unique, like Ukigumo, but there are some others like the red Amoenus. There are so many of them that if you lose the tag, then it becomes difficult to know which ones you have.
Well, I know we were traveling together. Well, we didn't actually travel together. We ended up in Japan at the same time. And we went to World Maple Park. Now, you were there for like a technology conference.
That's right, a space conference, yes.
Can you briefly describe what you do in technologies in space?
Well, I work for a company that makes satellites, so my field of expertise these days is satellite technology. And the Japanese Space Agency has a specific conference once a year in October on space microelectronics for space components, etc. It's an area that is one of my specialties. So I was able to convince my company that it would be good if I go there and make presentations in October, of course.
It's a good time to be in Japan.
There was another conference in August, but I didn't apply for that.
We actually had some good times in Japan between doing our hike around Yoshino Trail that Yano-san had recommended that we do for collecting seed, and then going and visiting World Maple Park and just talking and seeing Masayoshi
I was so
Yano.
impressed.
That was a great experience we had with Yano, meeting him and seeing all he's doing. Really interesting.
I was so impressed. We pulled up there to the gate, and the translator was there, and I said, "We're gonna have a great time," because it was just he had just rolled out the red carpet for all of us, and we got to go eat there at the Maple Cafe where we had
and not only the trees in the arboretum, but also all the maple related material, pictures.
I found it really
books,
interesting.
Really interesting. That Jano had,
maple clothing for in the winter that he displays. So when the trees are out of leaf, he brings out the kimonos and all the maple clothing,
and even maple beer. Remember?
Yeah. We had the red ciders that were colored with 40 red maple leaves. Remember that?
Right.
It was pretty good. It tasted a lot better than the maple tea. I had the maple tea. That tasted like feet. It was terrible. But the ciders that were colored
with the red from
maple leaves, that was delicious.
That was super delicious. So you've traveled to Japan, obviously. I mean, we were traveled to Japan with you. I know you went and visited Nikko and doing a lot of things in Japan. What other countries have you went and looked at maples out in the wild?
Well, Japan, I was with you, but this was one of the 7 times I've been there in the fall. So I traveled Japan all along in the mountains. I've done a lot of hiking there in the Honshu Mountains. So I think I have really understood the Japanese flora and the Japanese forests, and what I learned there, what I saw, you too, or when you were, but I've done more extensive hiking than you there. It really encouraged me to duplicate that in my place. So what I did is that instead of having the trees clear to have a space for each tree to grow, in my place now I have the reproduction of a Japanese forest, mountain forest, where the maples actually fight with each other for room. So it's if you are in my place, if you go to the mountains of Honshu, it's exactly the same feeling. Exactly the same feeling.
So all you maple collectors that Steve Bender joked about having too many trees in a small space, you're replicating that Japanese landscape.
I'm replicating there in the mountain forest. It rains so much that there is really what to feed all the very dense network of trees. So if you go around the lake of what is the name of this lake?
Was it Chuzenji?
Chuzenji.
Yeah. Beautiful.
One of the most famous places to watch the fall colors. What is unusual there is that the forests around the lake are only maple forest, which is very unique because normally maples share the room with other trees, and there they are really onto each other. When you go in the fall, you see all the yellows and reds mingling each other. It's really
that was one of my favorite places. We pulled up there separate. I believe we actually did that part separate. And
yes.
When you pulled up there to Lake Chuzenji, not only was it like this gorgeous lake, it was sports day, so everybody was out on those like swan boats. So they had those swan boats for their dates. Yeah, and they were out pedaling. And then there were just like, it already looked magical, but then there were like these 50-foot Acer Shirasawadums around some of the area. I mean, some of those Shirasawadums had to be a couple hundred years old. I mean, they were breathtaking. And then there were some really nice Acer Japonicums, and we just really enjoyed that. That was
Did you get to go up and see Ryuzu Falls up there?
Yeah, of course, several times.
When we went, there were just some amazing Japonicums right around the falls themselves.
Right, exactly.
And Matt and I we probably spent 30 minutes just for photographing the Japonicums there, just enjoying that waterfall and getting some ice cream there at the gift shop right beside of it. I think that's the thing that people don't talk about in Japan. The ice cream there. They got so many different flavors.
It's every flavor ever.
And everywhere you stop, if it's like a pit stop along the side of the road, they're selling ice cream.
Right.
The green tea was okay, but the mangoes and some of the fruits were really on point. We need some of those flavors over here. You're well versed in Acer species. Do you have a favorite Acer species, or what are among some of your favorite Acer species?
I often have questions like this when people, when visitors come to visit my place. And I tell them, the question you should ask me, is there any plant you don't like?
Right.
And that's a tough question. So in the species, also for the cultivars, it depends on the setting. For example, the Acer manchuricon is fantastic alone without, where he can really develop this very elegant port that it has. And on the other hand, the pictons are very solid look. I don't have a specific favorite. I like them all, and depending on the setting, depending on the purpose, I like one more than others.
That's a good political answer for the chairman of the Maple Society.
Right. No delegation of maples are mad at you now.
You got the scientists, or they're like, okay, he said some species. You got the cultivar people who are like, okay, he didn't pick a favorite. So it's good all across the Maple Society.
I think we maple lovers should have one favorite for each day of the year.
Right.
So somehow we should take one of
today.
these calendars and then write down, today I like Sangokaku. So
I'm going to use that.
The 23rd of May is Sangokaku my favorite. And with 5,000 cultivars, I'm sure you can even have 3 or 4 favorites for each day of the year.
Right.
That is for sure. That is for sure. Yeah, Japanese maples, and the maple species, it's just so fun to go out there and see them out in the wild, to see them in people's gardens. I know that you were also good friends with Peter Gregory.
Yes, sure. Peter was a very good friend of mine. Late in life, of course, I met him only for the first time in 2008. But we became very good friends. He would come over with his wife to visit us in Toulouse. There was a direct flight from Bristol to Toulouse, which made it very easy for him because he would say, "Oh, I like the heat of Toulouse." And
I made that flight from Toulouse to Bristol, so I'm
the other way, right?
Yes.
So he really enjoyed being in the sunshine of Toulouse and also discussing plants and maples with me and going around the woodland. In fact, it's not the garden I have, it's the woodland, taking pictures that he would use then in his books and in his presentations. I was very sad when I learned of his death a few years ago.
Amazing guy. He always made everybody feel so welcome.
That's right.
I got a little choked up at the maple side. I mean, I think Talon Buchholz did, mentioning him in his presentation. Several of us did. And we started talking about Peter, and I started thinking about the Maple Society meetings, and here comes this taxi, and this British guy gets out with a suitcase, and everybody goes, "Oh, Peter Gregory's here!" Like everybody gets so excited for, and just all the fun times with him.
He was such a humble person, really willing to help with anybody.
For sure.
I know whenever we first met him, Matt and I were at the Texas meeting, and we got our books, and we met other people, but we were going up to try to get him to autograph the book. We were shaking a little bit,
right.
And he's like, "Oh, wrote some nice things, talking to us, very friendly. Just keeps up a conversation with you. Treats you like you're..."
Treat us like we were equals. Like we
right.
had 10 maple books, and we were somebody to talk to.
"Come sit down here and have breakfast with me."
Right.
I mean, just the sweetest, nicest man ever, and really made us feel special. And I remember that, and I know that you've probably had a lot of different experiences with him throughout the years. Is there anything in particular that you remember, or any stories about Peter Gregory that some of our listeners might enjoy?
Not at this moment. I think he was more into species than cultivars. Cultivar for him was, they were nice, and there is a cultivar with his name that Dick Vanderman mentioned. But his real passion was the species and understanding whether this is a species or a subspecies. This was really.
We actually asked him what his favorite maple was, as we do with a lot of people. And he said his favorite maple was Acer micranthum, one of those snake insects from micranthum.
That's right.
And he just went on. He said, I love the leaf. I love the fall color. I love the habit. And it was something that he really enjoyed. And the one that was named Peter's Choice by Dick Vandermaat was actually one when he went and visited Dick Vandermaat and said, he said, "Oh, that's a nice plant." Exactly. And so then Dick ended up introducing it, naming it after him.
In fact, Dick had a bunch of selections. He asked Peter, "Which one's the one you like the most?" And that's the one that was named after him. I think he did it.
Smart.
I think he didn't. He was a little bit. Embarrassed for that. He didn't want to name to have a cultivar in his name, but at the end he accepted it at the beginning.
Very humble man, always so.
One thing now, memories are coming back. Something I remember from Peter is that he loved the sports cars. I don't know if you
was he a stock car driver or something like that? He kind of had some fame from
when he was younger, but he really loved to drive sports cars. Fast. So once he was taking me from the airport to his place.
Oh yeah, I rode around with him too
in a convertible, yes. And I was a little.
You hang on for dear life. I was riding around with him. He was an older fellow when I went and rode with him too.
I don't know how his dog stayed up in the car.
Right.
That rode with him so much.
That's right. He thought, "Oh, don't worry." At the end, he was very sorry because his eyesight really worsened for the last 4 or 5 years before his death, so he could not drive anymore, and he wanted to, but his wife told him, his companion told him, no, I love you too much to let you drive. So she took away the keys of the car.
Did he do something also like athletic?
Well, an anecdote of him is that he was a good friend of Prince Charles, now King Charles, sixth, the new King of England, because when next to Westminster there is a palatial residence where the Queen and the Prince and the Princesses would go there. Right. I don't remember which time of the year, but anyhow, they had tennis courts and Peter was an excellent tennis player.
Yeah.
So he played a lot of tennis with Prince Charles.
That's wild.
No, a long time ago, but he really knew them well.
He apologized to me to no end the one time I stayed with him. I flew from your house to his house and stayed a couple days with him, and he said, "I'm so sorry. I would take you to Prince Charles Gardens, but his gardener's on safari right now in South Africa, and if he had promised me if I'd returned when that guy wasn't on vacation, he would take us." So
he was a very good tennis player. Apparently, he never won Wimbledon, but
he was a smooth guy. Fun.
I know that's a completely not Maple related topic, but people need to know who Peter Gregory is, who was one of the co-authors of the third.
Whenever you get a friend of mine on here, it's always fun to talk.
Yeah, it always is.
So I'll tell you another anecdote that was kind of funny, and this was the time when we were in Belgium, and it was me and Agustin and the big guy from Texas. We had Keith Johansson with us.
Yeah, Keith, right.
And we went out to the night in Brussels, or it was actually Antwerp, I believe, and we decided to take the train out. So this was just kind of fun. I don't know if you remember this or not.
See, I remember.
So we're riding around, and we kept sending Keith out to check. So the signs, when he got off the train, it said UITGANG. And so Keith kept getting off, and he kept getting back on. And me and Agustin would say, "Does it say this place?" And he'd say, "No, it says the same thing." I don't know how to say this in Dutch, but it was the UITGANG. And he kept saying, "Oh, it's the same place." So we rode around the train for like 20 minutes, and finally, we're like, "This can't be the same place." So I hop off, and I find somebody that speaks English, and I say, "What does this UITGANG mean?" And they said, "It means exit." So we were riding around looking for the whole time. And it turned out we were looking at exit.
And he was there all the time.
Yeah. That was a blast. I had a blast riding, Agustin introduced me to a lot of international travel, and we got out and had a great time in Belgium and in France and also in the Netherlands there.
So Agustin, how is Emmerich? So for our listeners too, Emmerich was our very first intern and he was from France.
Our first international
intern. And since then we've had plenty of other horticulture interns, but Emmerich was our our own training and learning how how to work with interns.
Yeah,
So
he came and
your
stayed
son?
with our at our house for, was it 3 weeks? Maybe
No,
more?
no, it was 10 days. 10 days.
10 days, okay.
It felt longer.
We had fun.
We had a blast.
Well, Emmerich has a terrific experience. It was his first trip to the United States, so he was discovering the culture and especially the culture and habits of North Carolina. So he learned a lot with Nico's family. And he was really so well treated here. It was a fantastic experience for him. He learned a little bit about maples, but he learned a lot about other things here, about life in the United States. Today, we are still, we've been trying to find land for the last 3 years to buy and start his nursery. Mm-hmm. But we have a lot of requirements because we want that land to be close to where we live today. So it's complicated. Mm-hmm. In France, it's easy to find abundant land if you move away from cities. Mm-hmm. But today he's working from my place, so he's doing a lot of seedlings, not yet doing propagation by grafting because we don't have the installations for that. But he's doing some training by himself, preparing for the big jump whenever we get the land and start the nursery. So the plans are still there for him to do that for sure.
Very cool. We had so much fun getting to know him. And, engulfing him in some of our Southern American traditions. We gave him a lot of barbecue. We took him around to some good eating. It was his birthday while he was here. So
that's right. It was in February, right?
Yeah. We had some good times.
Yeah. We tried making sure that he got to get a good taste of what North Carolina is from everything. I know he had a blast and, had a lot of fun because we really tried to get around and do fun things with him, but also show him a little bit of the nursery side so he understood what you have to do, especially when we were much smaller, what you have to do to be hungry, to be...
Yeah, we did some grafting. I know we grafted a lot of ginkgos. He actually did pretty good with the grafting the ginkgos, too. That was where we kind of warmed him up on those.
Right. Well, he had a great experience. Has very good souvenirs. Today, he's learning Japanese. He has been learning for the last 3 years, so I'm sure that I will find him some traineeship in Japan. As soon as he he wants, I'm not yet ready. Japanese is a little bit difficult, but he's getting very good at it. So
that's awesome.
I'm sure he will perhaps with the World Maple Park with Yano. Why not? Yeah. He is always in need of help. So.
That would be incredible. Then we have a good excuse to go visit him too.
Right.
So that sounds even better.
And then we have someone who can translate for us, right, Agustin?
We have a translator for free. Yes.
Agustin's really doing this selfishly. Like, make sure you can learn some Japanese so I can figure out how to get to the good cultivars. No, that's a great thing. That's what a good skill to have too. That's amazing.
Yeah, if you are into Japanese maple, speaking Japanese, we have to agree it's a good thing, right?
Right. I took a course here at Blue Ridge Community College, which is a local college here, on Japanese, and it was a 2-part course, and all I learned was that I know nothing. That's what I learned. It helped a little bit phonically, but I learned how complicated and how in over my head I really was.
It's not something you say, I'm going to take a 15-day crash course to go. That's it. No. He's been taking courses for the last 3 years, and still he can now read more or less well. But you have in Japanese there the kanji. I don't know much about it myself, but he says it's complicated. So I trust him.
I thought it was interesting when we were talking with Haruko Buchholz, Talon Buchholz's wife, this past weekend. And we were talking to her about different names that people have put together. And she was like, well, yeah, those two things mean things separately, but together they don't mean that at all. And I mean, that's going to be such a learning process where you really have to get into Japanese culture to understand, what words actually make sense together. Because just because they're two words that sound like they make sense together, if you're out there making up new cultivar names and you try to piece them together, sometimes, it doesn't mean a thing at all.
But you have seen, you've been several times already to Japan, that if you don't speak Japanese, it's very difficult to move around and to meet people there. There are some few that understand a bit of English, but if you go there, being able to communicate in Japanese, the experience is totally different.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it definitely is. That's for sure.
I thought that was interesting, too. We get some flack sometimes for naming cultivars with American names. And it's funny because most of the American cultivars named with Japanese names don't make any sense.
I don't know. Do they translate into Japanese, American?
Sometimes.
They do?
Sometimes not.
So some people say, "Oh, I'm a purist. Every Japanese maple must have a Japanese name," and then they end up putting a name together that doesn't make any sense.
For example, have they translated peaches and cream in Japanese? Or
I'm sure, yeah.
Sure.
That probably makes more sense because it's a more one-to-one translation.
Okay.
It's when Americans try to make up Japanese that means something. Those normally miss the boat a little bit. So, we've had some really good travels together. I really had a good time on that trip to Mount St. Helens. We got out and we did some wild collecting of Acer circinatum around Mount St. Helens on our way up to Frank Biles' place. We actually went up to Olympia, Washington, to the Puget Sound there. Mm-hmm. And we were quite enamored. I remember when we went through there, we hit like some of the peak fall color for Acer circinatum through there. It was just a fun time.
Something that I thought was super interesting about that trip is whenever I started doing research of Acer circinatum, and Persh was the biologist, the taxonomist on the Lewis and Clark expedition. And he's the first person who described Acer circinatum. And so it was the Lewis and Clark expedition when they were going out and looking at the Louisiana, the purchase out here, whereas all the West, that's when they ran into Acer circinatum. And it was during the time in the fall when they went and visited, and it would have been a very similar experience to when we went to Mount St. Helens.
Oh, yeah.
Of seeing all those trees all across the mountains.
Don't kill me if I'm wrong here, but I believe a lot of times when you see the Army insignia, which they describe as an oak, it's actually an Acer circinatum leaf. If you look at that, it doesn't look much like an oak leaf. It looks like an Acer circinatum.
Right.
Kind of neat.
I got some of the seeds we collected. I got some seedlings in France, and one or two are still growing in my place. But Acer circinatum is an Acer that doesn't do well in Western Europe. In most places, we don't have a good explanation for that because the climate in Western France or in the Western UK is not so different from Oregon or Washington State in terms, very wet, humid, and cloudy. But for reasons, and do you guys have heard about the explanation?
We've tried. We've been very interested to try it on Acer circinatum understocks to see if the difference would be increased in dampness because as a native species they do get more damp conditions than Acer palmatum. So we've always been interested to study and see if Acer circinatums grafted to Acer circinatums would then do better, especially if they were getting more water. And maybe that might be part of the thing.
Because often Acer circinatum seems like they need more water in the winter than Acer palmatum rootstocks can provide them. And so that's an interesting topic that I don't think there's enough research done on that maybe someone in the Maple Society could do some research on at some point in the future.
It's really I have never seen a good color in circinatum in the gardens in Western Europe in the fall color. And it's a pity because when I see them in the Pacific Northwest, they are so beautiful. They're really, really great.
Yeah, I loved that trip when we went on there. We've often ran in and experienced a lot of really cool gardens and a lot of different trips all around the world.
Now, one thing we did with him was go into Looking Glass Rock.
Oh, the Looking Glass Rock hike. That was actually in perfect fall color last time we went.
Yeah, when we went, the team took me up there. Wow, what a beautiful spot there! And it was perfect timing for the fall colors, and it was warm. So I have a picture of myself without shirt, laying down in the rock, getting suntan in the beginning of November. So amazing! That was.
I remember we collected leaves all the way up and all the way back down. And when we got done, I was wondering, because I hadn't seen Acer spicata in the wild yet, that one was possibly Acer spicatum, but the one that wasn't a maple at all. It was a maple leaf viburnum.
Yeah, we had those maple leaf viburnums mixed in.
That's right.
I remember.
But that was the only thing that was a maple that was in fall color that we collected besides Acer spicata.
Yes, and remember, we also had a long discussion about Acer rubrum and how it could be with the whole, the big range for that.
So much variability for that.
Yeah, where the variability could also be studied and see if there's more than just variability. So, but that was an interesting discussion we had there.
It definitely is. We're going to have to find someone who can do some DNA research, and I think some of the people that were at the Maple Society meeting might be people that could actually do that for us.
So, Agustin, why don't we make a pitch to join the Maple Society here? Let's tell people why it's a great organization to be in. It's how we got to know you. It's a great thing to join. You should definitely be looking into the Maple Society. We've all just come back from the Maple Society meeting that was in Raleigh this year, but we've got to go on so many awesome trips through that.
Well, the Maple Society is trying to become the society where people who like maples can find activities and can meet other people who like the same. And going really from being a mainly British American society with 90% of the membership from those two areas, we are now expanding to have branches in other areas of the world. And we have recently created a French branch, a Spanish branch, and a Chinese branch, which is in the early beginnings. So the idea is that there is so many people in the world interested in maples, and they are they're a little bit alone. How do I share my interests, etc.? The Maple Society is a place to do it. And we are now, if you are a Maple Society member in North America, you can join the French branch, visiting gardens in France. And if you travel to Europe, then you can go to the website, and then in the website you have the list of members that have maple collections and are willing to open their gardens to visitors
from
the Maple Society.
Yeah, I really like that.
From any country. So this is really something that I'm sure those of you who like to travel will really certainly enjoy. I'm not saying only France or Spain or Italy, but I'm talking about Australia, Japan, New Zealand, because we have members all over the world. So this is really, and then if in your regional area, then we are trying to create activities managed at the regional level. So if you live in the northeast of the United States, what we want to do is to have regional activities organized several times in the year, so you don't have to wait every 2 years to go to the International Symposium, which is nice also to go, but you can also participate in activities, visiting gardens, having talks, learning how to graft, seed exchange, plant exchange, organized at the regional level, more easily accessible than if you have to go, if you live in Boston, you cannot easily go to Oregon to have a plant exchange. So this is really where we are going to in the Maple Society. So I do encourage everybody anywhere in the world to join the Maple Society and to contribute to the activities in your region, which is what we really want.
Yeah, I tell our listeners all the time, and I think a lot of our listeners, they're really from all over the world, but I always let people know it's such an international phenomenon, maples and Japanese maples and the love for horticulture that we're kind of growing there with the Maple Society. It's an interesting thing, and it's all over the world.
That's right. The French group, in fact, when we started about a year ago, the French branch was an instant success because the Maple Society gave them the frame to share their passion and to organize activities. So there was a huge uptake, and we went from 5 members to 80 members in less than 1 year. So it really shows that when you create the possibility for people to exchange and to share, then there is interest to do that.
So if you're in North America, you can go to the Maple Society's website, click on North America, join the North American branch. But we've got probably listeners from all over the world.
Oh yeah.
So
Agustin was telling us that some of his friends in the French branch catch our 10 at 10 video regularly too.
So if you're in France and you're not part of it, make sure you join the French branch. But also if you're in Japan, I mean, there's lots of different places to get involved with the Maple Society. So go in, join. If your area doesn't have a Maple Society yet, contact Agustin because he may be able to help you develop. If you've got numerous people in your area who want to start a Maple Society for your country, Agustin can help you get that started to get set up so you can be part of the Maple Society and really grow this, because this is a world phenomenon. I mean,
yeah, we want to create as many branches as possible worldwide because I'm sure maple interest in maples is global, and as there are some countries which are more difficult, countries which are very hot near the equator, very dry. But I'm sure that even in those places, there are specific maples that could make it. We have maples that are could grow well in dry conditions. Acer campestre has so many different cultivars available that if you cannot, successfully grow Japanese maples, then you can grow Southern European maples, which are very much adapted to dry conditions or to very alkaline soil. So maples can offer. You always have a maple solution for any situation. Right. Let's say it like this.
So definitely get involved with the Maple Society. Check out the website and find what's best for you there. But it's a great organization to get tied in with like-minded people who have a similar passion for maples. And it's definitely opened up a lot of doors for us to meet so many great people like yourself and Peter Gregory and
then you will receive a newsletter. It's the only existing publication worldwide specifically dedicated to maples, 4 times a year. So for a very small amount of the fee, then you get not only all these activities we mentioned before, but also you receive this publication, which is, as I said, the only one that talks about maples, scientific articles, practical articles on how to grow, etc. So it's a real fantastic resource for you to have, and which help you learn about maples in general.
Well, Agustin, we really appreciate you coming on today's show and talking with us so that all of our listeners can enjoy this conversation about maples, about our travels, about all the fun stuff that we've done throughout the years. I know we'll keep doing more and more for sure, but we really appreciate you coming on today's episode.
Okay, well, the pleasure was mine to be here, and I hope I will return. Not within a few years, not waiting for another. If I wait another 8 years, I'm sure I will never recognize this place in the future. And you guys come to Europe. The next symposium will be in 2 years' time in the UK, in Westonbirt. So this is an open invitation to Matt and Tim to come, but also to all maple lovers to
Westonbirt's a special place.
To write it down in your agendas for in 2024 in the fall. The UK. We don't have the dates yet, of course, but this is basically what we have agreed this time.
My special experience walking around Westonbirt with Peter Gregory was that we were walking around in fall color, and he was a little bit older than the picture on the back of the pocket guide, but everybody had their pocket guide with them as they were walking through the maple plantings, and people would look at the back of the pocket guide, then they would look at me and Peter and Hugh, and they'd go, "Oh, this is Peter Gregory," and then he was rushed with fans, but it was a cool experience.
Great.
Thanks for being on, Agustin. We greatly appreciate you visiting, but you're always welcome here.
It's a pleasure chatting with you guys.
Hey, thanks so much. Take care, y'all.
God bless.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye.